Alright, I know what you're thinking. Sweet, you said you were done with H1Z1 and all that. And I am, trust me, I'm done playing it, for sure.
I'm fucking done!
What's going on, everyone? The Sweet Lou here. Recently, I spent some time talking about why I was done with Just Survive, the Daybreak survival game that's being developed into the ground. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to throw shade already. Let's talk a little bit about Daybreak games. Long before Daybreak was a thing, there was a company known as SISA, Sony Interactive Studios America. That was around 1995. At the time, they were developing an MMORPG which would become EverQuest. Write that down in your copybooks, as that's going to be important later. This gets a little confusing now, so we're going to make a quick little flow chart here. In 1998, Sony Online Entertainment was created. Around the same time, SISA became 989 Studios, shifting gears to only making PS1 games. 989's computer division, remember formerly SISA working on EverQuest, became known as Red Eye Interactive and then later Verint Interactive. In 1999, Verint released EverQuest, which was a hit. After the success, Sony Online Entertainment acquired Verint. After the merge, the chief creative officer resigned, bringing many of the former EverQuest devs to a new company, Sigil Games. You still with me? Sony Online Entertainment released Star Wars Galaxies in 2003, EverQuest 2 in 2004. They released a bunch of expansions and other projects over the years. Nothing really crazy happened until 2011, where Sony Online Entertainment reported a massive data breach. This breach affected upwards of 24 million SOE accounts, compromising sensitive data including usernames, passwords, addresses, names, genders, emails, phone numbers, and potentially stored credit card numbers. In 2015, Sony announced the sale of Sony Online Entertainment to an independent company known as Columbus Nova for an undisclosed amount. Sony Online Entertainment would soon be renamed Daybreak Game Company, or Daybreak as we know them. Never heard of Columbus Nova? Neither did I. The company is a multi-strategy investment firm with over $15 billion of assets. These assets include Daybreak, Fiverr, and Rhapsody. Columbus Nova is the US-based affiliate of the Renova Group of companies, one of the largest Russian strategic investors in oil, machine engineering, mining, chemical construction, housing, utilities, and financial sectors. Sounds like the perfect conglomerate to be making polished games, am I right? When you Google Columbus Nova, you can actually read the single company review for yourself. This Mark guy sounds pretty upset with them. Do you have a dream? This company can crush it for you in record time. Highly recommended for any evil overlords looking for a good time. Anyway, to make a long story moderate in length, after this transition, Daybreak laid off a bunch of employees. So you had a bunch of the core EverQuest developers gone over to Sigil, and then you have even more layoffs, and you have a company that's still managing this beloved series. This seems like the perfect time to talk a little bit more about EverQuest. At the time of the transition, the game in discussion was EverQuest Next. You guessed it, the next installment within the EverQuest universe. Alongside of EverQuest Next was a sidekick of a title known as EverQuest Next Landmark. And you'll have to forgive me here because I never really played any of these games myself, but I did a fair deal of research on the matter. And I also have to thank UX Talzin, a YouTuber who commented on my old video, for pointing out Landmark. Without this user, I wouldn't have even known that this game was a thing, so smash that thank you react. EverQuest Next Landmark, it's such a mouthful, was an interesting title. It was initially marketed as a building tool for EverQuest Next. This might not be the best comparison on the planet, but think about like Minecraft or something like that. The game was a sandbox meant to introduce players to the world of EverQuest Next. The kicker was the fact that Daybreak was encouraging people to create content in the game in an attempt to shape the future of EverQuest Next. They wanted players to be shaping the future of EverQuest Next so badly that Terry Michaels, senior producer at the time, explained to IGN in an interview that he, quote, hopes that by encouraging competition between budding architects in these themed areas, Sony Online will be able to incentivize players to create content that's of a high enough caliber to feature in its fully fledged MMO EverQuest Next. Let's simplify that statement a bit. They were charging people to play an incomplete, early access game where players would build structures, and if those structures or environments were good enough, they would be used in the final product, EverQuest Next. It goes even further. The early access title EverQuest Next Landmark sold for much higher than your typical early access Steam game these days. The Landmark Founders Pack sold for $99.99, $59.99, and $19.99 for Trailblazer, Explorer, and Settler Pack respectively on the SOE station. The Founders Pack later became available on Steam Early Access for the same price. But that's not where the monetary transactions stop. EverQuest Next Landmark also had in-game microtransactions, where you could use real money to buy in-game money, which would later be renamed Daybreak Cash. Not only would these microtransactions profit off of in-game cosmetic items, but it would allow players to purchase resources required for building. While you could grind to get the resources, you could also slap your credit card down and be done with it. Director of Development Dave Georgeson explains the microtransactions in an interview. Very soon, you'll only need handfuls of resources to make picks and other tools. Tool and item progression will be limited by activities completed and achievements gained, not by resources. So letting people buy resources is really just a time shortcut to let people build more easily. Time shortcuts are basically convenience items and some other things like paying for upkeep, renting market stalls. These things won't affect game balance, as you can also get the same outcome through in-game efforts. I don't think I really need to explain how asinine that notion is. To say that buying resources won't have any sort of effect on the game is ridiculous. It's literally pay to win. Imagine that system implemented into some other games we know of. We'll talk more about that later. While still in early access, the game's title was changed. Sony Online Entertainment, remember, soon to become Daybreak Games, stripped the EverQuest Next branding from EverQuest Next Landmark, making the game simply Landmark. Now this begs the question, did Sony Online Entertainment and eventually Daybreak use the EverQuest branding to pimp Landmark out, to prey upon an already established fan base who would purchase this early access game, play an incomplete title, build content for another game, and dump money into microtransactions? Well, I'll leave that one up to you, my friends. On the records at the time of the name change, Director of Development Dave Georgeson once again explained the company's motivation. Landmark is anything you can imagine. Removing EverQuest Next seemed best. This doesn't change anything we've said about Landmark or EverQuest Next. All of the details of the game are still the same. We're still using Landmark to build EverQuest Next, and we'll still have areas dedicated to EverQuest Next. So essentially he's saying that the branding was changed due to the game evolving. It's interesting. Keep that in the back of your mind. Daybreak fully released Landmark in 2016. But they also pulled the plug on it in February of 2017, leaving many people understandably upset. Daybreak has openly said that they have no plans to release or license the software for users to create their own servers, and forget about private servers. Some articles online even imply the fact that Daybreak might sue you if you try to create one. Currently, within the Steam community page for Landmark, there's a massive thread with over 800 replies regarding attempted refunds from Daybreak. And speaking of current, we should probably address the number of changes to the Daybreak roster of employees. Since the cutover to Daybreak, besides the layoffs that we already outlined, numerous Daybreak employees resigned, including key members of the H1Z1 team. Obviously, we have Player Unknown, aka Brandon Green, who worked for Daybreak, helping them create the Battle Royale mode that would later become known as King of the Kill. He went on to make PUBG. In its short existence on Steam, PUBG has managed to not only be a far superior game to King of the Kill in terms of controls, gunplay, and overall game mechanics, it's also managed to garner over 10 times the amount of players that King of the Kill ever had. But going back to Daybreak, we've had a chain of presidents. In 2015, it was John Smedley. Though unconfirmed, a few sites suggest that he left largely due to online harassment and even being swatted by a group known as the Lizard Squad. Then we had Russell Shanks, but only until October 2016. Not sure why he left or why Google thinks he's still in charge there. He was replaced by G. Ham. These fucking names sound fake. You can do a little digging yourself about G. Ham, because I couldn't really find too much substantial information. I don't want to report things that might not be true. But you get the point, don't you? I mean, how many companies do you know go through presidents at that rate? I imagine you're beginning to draw some parallels here. Landmark, a game about building stuff, resources, using Daybreak Cash. It's really striking how similar Landmark's situation is to Just Survive. Both games started off as an early access alpha. Just Survive obviously still is. Both games underwent some serious staff changes at Sony Online Entertainment and Daybreak. Both games endured a branding and name change for debatably sketchy reasons. Ironically, when asked about the name change for Just Survive, they kind of cited the same information, that the game has been evolving and the name change is justified. Both games heavily push microtransactions regarding cosmetic items. While I can't attest to how things were with Landmark, I can certainly say that in my time with H1Z1, the loot crates were the only thing consistently being developed. Both games were lit up with negative Steam reviews, and both games have angry players wanting refunds. Really, the only two things that Landmark has that Just Survive doesn't is the microtransactions for resources and the fact that Daybreak pulled the plug on it. And if we're being honest here, would it surprise you if eventually Daybreak decided to allow players to purchase base building materials for real money? I'm sure you've heard the phrase, "those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it." So when you consider Daybreak's history and their business practices, it's really not a shocker that things have gone in the direction they have. Thanks for hearing me out, guys. I'd love it if you tell me your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, smash that subscribe button. What, you know what? I mean, you made it here, right? You might as well. All right, that's enough YouTuber shit. All right, bye.